clean and tidy in time for celebrations marking the 49th independence anniversary. The Paramount CFO and other task force members thank His Excellency the President, Chair Professor Alhaji Dr. Yehe Jame, government departments, individuals, APRC supporters and officials, and all those who participated in the first set for making it a resounding success. Residents of Churchillstown have a new mosque, the house of prayer constructed to the tune of $2.5 million by sons and grandsons of the late Isa Sissoho is called Masjid Isa Mariam. Buba Sise has the details.
Masjid Isa Mariam Mosque is a stone's throw from the Banjul-Brikama Highway in Churchillstown. The opening of the mosque brought together Muslims from across Kanifi municipality. It was built by the sons and grandsons of the late Alhaj Isa Sissoho. Alhaj Fansu Kamara, Alhaj Bubakar Sinera, both commended those who contributed to the construction of the mosque, urging Muslims to be united and continue to show respect for the leadership. These two elders further called on Muslims to regularly use the mosque as their prayer ground. Alhaji Manson Jan spoke on behalf of the Islamic community of Churchillstown.
This edifice is comprising of 3 stories. The first story building is for the madrasa, and the second story building, that's the female ward, and the third building, that's for the men, where we are seated right now. This was possible, the building, through the grandsons and the sons of the late Isa Sissoho. Mohamed Sissoho, Bakibili Sissoho and co and brothers. Both are based in Angola. And the edifice was built at a tune of $2.5 million that was given to the Islamic community of Churchillstown. It doesn't belong only to Churchillstown, but the whole Islamic Ummah of Serekunda and the Gambia. There's no restriction to worship Allah in this mosque. You can come to the mosque any moment and any time you feel. It is Allah's mosque, it doesn't belong to anybody.
According to the eldest son, Bakibili Sissoho, the project was initiated out of their love for Islam and thank God for giving them the means and the ability to fulfill their ambition. Bakibili called on the Ummah to see the mosque as God's, adding that God's house belongs to every Muslim, urging his fellow Muslims to utilize the mosque as intended. The mosque is now open to all Muslims. It was emphasized by the elders that unity and respect for leadership should be everybody's business, nothing that Islam is oneness and that is unity. The Friday prayer was led by Imam Muhammad Silla.
صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
Buba SMCC, GRTS.
Well, time now to take our first break. We'll be back with news from outside the Gambia. Welcome back. The interim president of the Central African Republic is resisting calls to divide her country into 2 geopolitical entities. The suggestions come against the backdrop of a seemingly unrelenting vicious cycle of religious violence. We have more in this report.
Opposition supporters held a large demonstration in Caracas and other large cities in Venezuela, where thousands of people, including many students, marched to protest against the high cost of living and the lack of security. The protests turned violent at certain points, and 3 people were killed and more than 20 injured. Witnesses said armed men on motorcycles were firing on the crowd.
Organized groups showed up and began shooting at us. 6 of us were wounded.
The people behind the intimidation and spreading of tension remain unknown. Government and opposition supporters are blaming each other for the violence.
Today, we are mourning the deaths of two Venezuelan youths. We are investigating because both have gunshot wounds to the face, in the head.
Chronic food shortages and price hikes up to 56% in 2013 explain this wave of protest against the Maduro government. Crime and lack of security are also a main cause for anger.
I came to demonstrate today with other students from my university because we are fed up with the lack of security and theft that many students have experienced. When we are afraid to walk in the streets at night, how can we feel free?
Press workers and journalists have joined the movement, protesting against the paper shortages hitting the written press. Tension in Venezuela is visible, where the poor economic situation and strong protest movement have many people worried.
Well, that story was on hundreds of Venezuelans who descended on the streets of the capital, Caracas, and other large cities to protest against the rising cost of living and lack of security. At least 67 houses have collapsed and 1,000 others partly destroyed after a magnitude 6.8 earthquake struck China's sparsely populated Xinjiang region. And Taiwan's mainland affairs minister and his Chinese counterpart have been talking business. For more on these and other stories, we go with this CFI World News Roundup.
8-magnitude earthquake struck China's sparsely populated Xinjiang region on Wednesday. Authorities said that at least 67 houses had collapsed and more than 1,000 were damaged. No deaths have yet been reported. By Thursday morning, monitors had registered 739 aftershocks, the largest of them measuring 5.7 on the Richter scale. Taiwan's mainland affairs minister arrived in China's eastern city of Nanjing on Tuesday to meet with his Chinese counterpart for historic trade talks. Relations have been strained between Taiwan and China since the 1949 Communist Revolution, when China's government at the time relocated to the island. Mainland China regards Taiwan as its 23rd province. However, the Taiwanese president said he saw no urgent reason to address political issues at these talks, which are to continue until Friday. Brazilian police fired tear gas and rubber bullets at protesters in Brasilia on Wednesday. Nearly 15,000 people had joined a march of the landless workers movement. They are angry over the government's failure to enact promised agrarian reforms. Authorities said 2 protesters and at least 22 police officers were injured in the clashes. This morning, President Dilma Rousseff called a special meeting of her advisors to respond to the protesters. During his address to the Israeli Knesset on Wednesday, the head of the European Parliament, Martin Schulz, calls an uproar, prompting a walkout by several far-right lawmakers. Mr. Schulz had quoted a young Palestinian as saying that Israelis in the West Bank received 4 times as much water as Palestinians. Mr. Schulz had asked for a confirmation. According to a 2012 UN report, Israelis in the West Bank received 6 times more water than their Palestinian neighbors.
Well, we now take a second break. We'll be right back. And before we end this edition of the news, a quick reminder of the day's top stories. President Jammeh has returned to Banjul after a 2-day state visit to Turkey, describing the trip as one of the most successful visits he undertook to that country. Lawmakers have decried the non-payment of millions of dollars in areas owed to utilities giant NAWEC by local government entities. Peacekeepers in the Central African Republic have discovered a mass grave containing the remains of people believed to be victims of what some international organizations are now calling religious cleansing. And 3 people have been killed and several others injured as demonstrators had hit by the skyrocketing cost of living and an acute lack of security take to the streets of the Venezuelan capital, Caracas, and other major cities. Well, that was all in this edition of the news. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 10 with another bulletin.